Hello everyone, my name is Travis Spencer and I'm going to give you a quick demonstration of using additional factors as a source for claims in Curity version 5.1. To do that, I'm going to first of all configure a authentication profile. In this authentication profile, I've created different authenticators. I've created one that uses an HTML form, one that uses a mobile app running NCAP, and I've created a username authenticator. The idea here is that the HTML form will be used to log in people from my own company, and this NCAP mobile app will be used to log in people who don't have an email address at my organization, and then a username authenticator that will be used to distinguish and pick which of those two should be used. To do that, on the username authenticator, I've created a switch action, which is sort of like an if else statement. So if I drill into this, you can see that I've set different conditions here. In particular, I've checked to see if the attributes that are coming in from the authenticator, the username authenticator, if it ends in Curity.io, and if it is, then it will run the HTML multi-factor action, which I'll show you in a second. And if that's not the case, then it's the other, and it will run the NCAP multi-factor action. And if both of those conditions fail, which of course they never will, then the switch statement will fail. So then let's look at those actions. Here I have those two that I used in the switch statement. So in the run HTML, both of these are multi-factor conditions. All it does is check to see if the email address begins with that, then it will run the Curity HTML one. It's kind of superfluous because it's handled in the switch statement, but in any event, I add that subject condition there and check for that. And similarly, in the NCAP one, I have a subject condition that just looks for anything and then runs the NCAP one. Okay, so that is the authentication profile and the different authenticators in there using the actions on those. Now, I have a OAuth client here, and that is called Tools. And here it is configured to only allow one of those authenticators. So it will go straight into that one rather than allowing the user to pick one of those because we're going to use our actions to make that determination instead. So also importantly, this client has the code flow capability, and it also has the OpenID scope. Okay, so now let's jump back over here to OAuth Tools, make a new flow here. I'll do the code flow, and I'll pick that tools client that I've configured here in my environment, and I'll use that OpenID scope, and we'll go ahead and log in by doing the authorization flow. Here I get directed over, and first thing I'm going to do is type my username Teddy. It remembered it from the last flow, so it even pre-typed it for me. So go ahead and click next there. So this doesn't match the condition of beginning with or ending with an email address security. So it runs the NCAP multi-factor action. So here Teddy has a device configured, so I'll just go ahead and pick that one. But if I didn't, I would have added a device. But since I do, I'll pick that one. So now it starts the login on my phone here, and I'll just enter the PIN and unlock that. And now that I have, I'm redirected back, and now I just need to complete the OAuth flow by redeeming the code. So now I get an access token and a refresh token and an ID token since I asked for that OpenID scope. And I see here that the ACR is username. So the actual authenticator that was used was the username. But interestingly, I have another claim here of additional factor, which tells me that the login method that was used additionally was the NCAP one. So that's kind of interesting. And I'll show you how we did that in a second. But to sort of help you see how these actions work a little bit more, let's do the flow again, saying that we want to prompt the user to log in, so ignoring their single sign-on session. So we'll start the flow. And here I will type test at Curity.io. So this is going to match that switch statement that we added, and now it's going to run the HTML authenticator. So now I have test at Curity, and my password manager has filled in the password, and now I can log in there. So now it runs the code flow. I just need to finish the step here of redeeming the code. I get the access token and a refresh token again for this user. And the ID token tells me again that the ACR is the username, but the additional factor was this time the Curity HTML one. So how did we get the additional information about the login method that was used by the action into the ID token. Well, let's see. First of all, in the authentication profile in the general section, you'll notice a new setting here called include attributes of all authenticators. So I enabled that, and that will make available the additional factors from those MFA actions available in the authentication attributes. So to use those, what I did is I made a claims provider, and I made a script claims provider. Here you can see the type. If I pop this open and I look at the procedure here, I have this procedure that all it's doing is looking at the different authorities that are in those authentication attributes, or context attributes rather. And then I find the authority for the ACR, and then I want to get the additional factors that were used by saying all of the values with an ACR at some authority. And I know it's the 0th one because in my scenario I only have one additional authority, but you could loop through these also if you have many of them. So now I have that additional factor, and I return it in a JSON object that I create here by mapping that to a field called additional factor. So now I have this new source of claims, which is pulling from the authentication attributes, but doing some processing of that. So now I create a new claim, which I call additional factor. The source of this is the script claims provider, and the only attribute in there is the one that we're getting out of that JSON object that we just looked at, the additional factors property. It's not doing any value transformation. It's adding it into the OpenID scope. So anytime a client application asks for that OpenID scope, it will map that or this claim into the ID token because we've configured it here to put it into the ID token. So that's really it. That's all we had to do in order to get the information about that additional factor into the ID token and use that from different users based on their email address, whether or not we should run one kind of authentication or another, but then letting the client application know exactly what happened. So thanks for tuning in and checking out this demonstration. Hope you enjoy using this new feature in Curity version 5.1.